videos, I want to take a look at some of the obviously ridiculous Bible stories that are sold to us as true. The one that first struck me as impossible, even as a small child, was Noah's floating magical zoo. There are so many unanswered questions related to the ark, and all the years I asked these questions I got the same answer: God can do anything. Sorry, that's not good enough for me. Okay, so here are some of the questions I had trouble with. It is strange how there were cultures and civilizations all across the globe that never seemed to notice that they had been wiped out by the flood. Bearing in mind that the flood of the Noah story happened around 1400 BC. The Giza pyramids of Egypt were built around 2500 BC. So the Egyptians were there long before the flood and were still there after the flood. The Shang dynasty of China ruled from 1600 BC, where the people were using ceramic molds to cast from bronze. The Chinese were there before the flood and were still there after the flood. In Australia, the Sydney rock engravings dated to 4000 BC are evidence that the Aboriginal people also existed before the flood and were still there after the flood. So who exactly did God exterminate with this flood of his? Certainly not all the people of the world. I have only given 3 examples of cultures that didn't even blink an eye while they were busy being drowned, but there are many others. Drowning the entire population of the earth seems like an awfully messy way to go about exterminating everything. Besides, in the Bible it says that God was angry with man. So why kill all the animals? Isn't he all-powerful? Couldn't he have simply made everyone die from a global simultaneous heart attack? Or just snap his fingers and say the magic words, "let there not be," and make everyone just disappear? This seems like an extremely cruel way to go about it. I thought this was a God of love, compassion and kindness. What did the animals do to incur his wrath? And the part that always got me was, why didn't he kill the fish? They, on the contrary, loved this idea. How Noah collected the animals remains a mystery to everyone who doesn't believe God did it, which is an actual word for any time God just magics something when it goes against the laws of physics, nature, logic or reality in general. I can understand how with great effort and dedication Noah and his family may have been able to round up a couple of elephants, lions, dogs, cats, giraffe and other animals that were in the vicinity. The part that does require a great leap of the imagination is how animals indigenous to countries thousands of miles away were brought to Mesopotamia. 2 kangaroos and 2 koala bears from Australia, 2 penguins from Antarctica, 2 grizzly bears from North America. Many of these animals, especially those indigenous to other countries and climates, would have suffered severely and perished on the boat. Way too hot for penguins. Koalas eat only eucalyptus plants. Did Noah take a year-long provision of eucalyptus plants to sustain the koalas? Also, remember, according to Genesis 7 verse 4, God only gave Noah 7 days to collect the animals. Okay, so Genesis 6 verses 14 to 16 makes the ark 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide and 30 cubits high, which is about 450 feet or 135 meters long, 75 feet or about 23 meters wide, and 45 feet, which is about 14 meters high, and built into 3 decks, a lower, middle and upper decks. This is essentially 3 football fields stacked one on top of the other. Calculating how many animals were housed on this floating zoo is difficult. The Bible is no help either, when it can't even make up its mind if it was 7 of each kind or 2 of each kind. And what the hell is a kind? Kind is the word used by apologists to minimize the number of animals. It's a generic term like family of animals. If you asked a 7-year-old child to describe groups of animals, they would probably say kind because they don't understand classifications of animals into species. Let's be generous and accept the 2-of-a-kind version. Once again, in the vein of being nice, I went to creationists to get figures. According to Ken Ham's Ark Encounter, Noah cared for 7,000 animals. BibleStudy.org gives several figures but seems to settle on 40,000 animals, and they call that a conservative number. So do I. ChristianAnswers.net puts the figure at 50,000 animals, and in the book The Genesis Flood by authors Drs. Morris and Whitcomb, they put the figure at 35,000 animals. As a matter of fact, aside from Ken Ham's ludicrously low number, most of the figures I found were in the region of between 25,000 and 55,000 animals. Was there enough space on the ark to accommodate all these animals? All creationist websites I visited on the subject indicated there was plenty space. What they seem to imply is that if you neatly pack all the animals shoulder to shoulder and tail to nose, they will fit with plenty space left for living quarters and food storage areas. If we did cram them in like that, it would be fine for a few hours, but certainly not for the year they were on board the boat. Imagine for a moment 3 football fields lying side by side, and we begin to populate their surface area with animals. Picture bringing on 2 elephants, then 2 rhinos, 2 hippos, 2 buffalo, 2 bears. With just those 10 animals, we have used up a quarter of one of the fields. If I were to take the absolutely lowest number of animals I could find, which was 2,000, a ludicrously low number, that would still leave 1,990 animals to be led on. Yes, but the apologists would say, this is an emergency situation and they can be packed tightly together. No, an emergency would be a few days at most. This was an entire year. Also keep in mind, the animals were kept in a highly stressed environment with storming weather continuously buffeting the boat from side to side and living for an extended period of time in close quarters with countless animals designed to feed on you as a permanent prey. In the document titled Guidelines on Minimum Dimensions for Enclosures for Housing Animals of Different Species in Zoos, the following minimum enclosure sizes are stipulated as examples. Monkeys, 500 square meters. Bears, 1,000 square meters. Buffalo, 1,500 square meters. Elephant, 5,000 square meters. Giraffe, 1,500 square meters. Tigers, 1,000 square meters. Although the document stipulates these areas are per animal, I'm quite happy to concede that a pair of animals could probably be housed in the same area. Just these 12 animals mentioned above would occupy 10,500 square meters. That's more than the 9,315 square meters available. Here's a quick fact you might find interesting. The average elephant eats between 200 and 500 pounds of food per day. Noah had 2 of them on board. Let's be generous and accept a figure in the lower range. There would have to be 1 metric ton of food available every 4 days. That's 10 tons of food just during the time it rained. According to the Bible passages ranging from Genesis 7 verse 6 to Genesis 8 verse 20, they were on the ark from between 364 and 377 days. I know, the Bible is less than accurate on most statements of fact. Again, let's be generous and just call it a year. The elephants required a minimum of 91 metric tons of food to sustain them for the voyage. That was just the elephants. There were many other huge beasts needing similar quantities of food: hippos, bison, rhinos, and lest we forget, dinosaurs. Then there is the small but important subject of diet. Not all animals can just eat whatever is put in front of them. Many animals have specific dietary requirements. Koalas eat only eucalyptus plants. Pandas eat bamboo shoots. And you have to ask the question, if snakes eat rats, didn't Noah have to take on a whole lot more rats than was instructed by God? And while we're on the topic, there are way too many animals on the ark that eat other animals. Where would the lions get their food from? They wouldn't have survived very long on some kind of vegan diet. We all know scientifically how rainbows form as the raindrops prism the light, breaking it up into its constituent colors. Bronze Age Bible writers didn't know this, which gave them ample leeway to make up any nonsense that suited their purpose, not knowing that future Bible readers would understand science. Was the rain that fell at the time of the flood the first rain ever to fall on the earth? If it had rained before, they would have been familiar with rainbows. And if it had never rained before, everybody would be dead. I came across a really interesting post on a website where Andrew Seidel from the Freedom from Religion Foundation did a quick calculation on the amount of water needed to flood the earth. And I'll post a link at the bottom of this video to this website. I didn't double check his math. He has an honest looking face. And this is what he came up with. Genesis 7 verse 20 says that the water covered the highest mountains by 15 cubits. Now Mount Everest is 29,028 feet tall. Add to that the 15 cubits, another 22 feet. The volume of a sphere is V equals 4 over 3 pi r cubed. The Earth's radius is 3,959 miles. The radius of the flood is 3,959 miles, which is the radius of the Earth, plus 5.501 miles, which gives us 29,050 feet. Mount Everest plus 15 cubits is 3,964.5 miles. So the volume of the Earth is 259,923,241,564 cubic miles. The volume of the Earth with flood water is 261,008,408,332 cubic miles. Now subtracting the one from the other gives us the total volume of the flood water. 261,008,408,332 cubic miles minus 259,923,241,564 cubic miles is 1,085,166,768 cubic miles of water raining. Let's be charitable and deduct 25%, making allowance for the volume of land above sea level. This still gives us 813,875,076 cubic miles of water raining down. All the water present on the earth adds up to about 332.5 million cubic miles. Rain would have had to have fallen at the rate of about 17 feet per hour. That kind of persistent torrential downpour lasting 40 days and 40 nights globally would have destroyed the ark before it even got going. Also, something interesting to bear in mind is that the ark would have been floating above the highest mountain, Mount Everest, for several months in an area known by mountaineers as the death zone, above 26,000 feet. The air at that altitude is too thin to breathe and is the reason mountaineers use oxygen canisters and aircraft are pressurized. Noah, his family and all the animals on board would have succumbed to oxygen deprivation unless the ark was hermetically sealed and pressurized. In the year that the earth was underwater, taking into consideration the turbulence of the water, the depth of the water blocking out the sunlight, and depositing of excess sediment, plants would have all died out. No wonder the raven sent out by Noah came back empty-beaked. The surprising thing is that the dove came back with an olive branch. Olive trees do not grow tall and can survive up to about 4,000 feet above sea level, certainly not the 29,000 feet that the water level was at. The dove would not have found a surviving olive tree at that height. So just to recap, God, angry that man had become sinful, decided to exterminate the whole lot. He chose the one man he believed to be righteous, an old drunk who eventually had sex with both his daughters, bearing them children. This God tells Noah to build a boat, collect all the different kinds of animals in pairs to survive the deluge. But the problem is, this story is not unique. About 300 years earlier, in the Akkadian and Babylonian epic of Atrahasis, the god Enki warns the only righteous man in the world, Atrahasis, to build an ark because the gods were planning to destroy the world with a flood. Atrahasis was to take 2 of every kind of animal in the ark with him to preserve the animal kingdom. But that wasn't the original story either. About 600 years before that one was the Sumerian flood story found in the Epic of Gilgamesh from Mesopotamia. In this story, the god Ea tells Upnashtim that the gods were planning to flood the earth and he was to build a boat. Ea gave him specific dimensions and told him to seal it with bitumen. Upnashtim, his family, craftsmen and all the animals of the field went onto the boat. When the water subsided, Upnashtim released first a dove, then a swallow, and then a raven. And even those are not unique. There are several others. Zeus, for example, instructed Deucalion to build a boat when he decided to flood the world. The Noah story is a retelling of a story which itself was retold at least one time previously. And the thought to leave you with was, did nobody else own a boat? Surely there were people who had boats, and if they had boats, couldn't they just got on the boat and survived? Was Noah's boat the only one in existence? So in this series of ludicrous Bible stories, I plan on putting forward a whole lot of them so we can see that the Bible is just a load of made-up nonsense that need not be taken seriously at all. Once again, thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. And please hit the little bell notification so that you can see when the next one comes available. Lovely speaking to you again. I'll see you soon.